Lien woke up to a world that seemed, almost disturbingly, normal. The faint hum of her coffee maker percolating in the corner of her tiny apartment, the crisp autumn breeze sneaking in through the half-open window, the sound of traffic whining beneath her window. Everything was as it had been yesterday, and the day before that. But Lien had learned one hard truth in her 27 years of existence: normality was a lie. And this morning was no exception. She stretched, rubbed her eyes, and was about to get out of bed when something strange happened. Her fingers, her hands, trembled like leaves in a windstorm. She glanced down and froze. Her nails, long, sharp, and unnaturally green, glinted in the low morning light. "Crap," she muttered. This was no hangover-induced hallucination. It was too real. Too weird. Her left hand shot out reflexively to pinch her right arm. Nope. Not a dream. She was awake. Very awake. Too awake. And her fingernails were doing their best impression of something out of a bad science fiction movie. "Great," she whispered. "Just when I thought my life couldn't get any more absurd." Lien, a coder by profession and an avid conspiracy theory enthusiast by night, had always felt like something was off about her. Her life, her world, felt like it was one step removed from the reality everyone else experienced. Perhaps it was the endless loops of Netflix shows she binge-watched, or the late-night YouTube dives into quantum mechanics, but it was as if her world wasn't entirely aligned with what should be. And now, apparently, her hands were turning into claws. Just another Tuesday. She squinted at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, half expecting to see the same woman who'd gone to bed the night before: average height, black hair, slightly slouched posture, basically, a woman trying to make it in a world that wasn't designed for her. Instead, she saw someone else staring back at her, someone different. Her skin had taken on a strange iridescence, glowing faintly like it had absorbed all the light in the room and refused to give it back. Her hair was longer, darker, and shimmering. What the hell was going on? For a moment, she just stared. There were no words. What do you say when you look in the mirror and your own reflection no longer feels like you? Okay. This is fine. Just breathe, Lien said to herself, running a hand through her now waist-length hair. The shimmering green strands slipped between her fingers like liquid, almost like they were alive. "You're not losing your mind." "Probably." She pinched herself. "Nope. Still awake, should have skipped that third espresso shot yesterday," she muttered, trying to break the tension with sarcasm. She wasn't sure if it was working. "I always told myself if I ever woke up with glowing skin and alien nails, I'd take a sick day." But Lien had never felt more awake, more alive, than she did at that moment. She flexed her fingers again, and to her shock, her claws seemed to stretch in response, elongating like something out of a cartoon. The sensation was strange, but not entirely unpleasant. It was as though her body was moving in ways it hadn't before, responding to an invisible pull in the air. Her skin tingled with an energy she couldn't quite place. It was like an adrenaline rush without the fear. The sound of her phone buzzing on the kitchen counter startled her, breaking the strange reverie. It was a text from her coworker: "Sam, you coming in today? Boss is breathing down my neck about the server upgrades. You know how he gets." The message was ordinary enough. But Lien could barely read the words. Her mind was buzzing too loudly. She wasn't sure what was more urgent, her appearance or the growing sense that the world itself was shifting under her feet. Yeah. Sure. Just running late." She texted back, though she didn't know why she was bothering. She had no intention of going into work today. Not unless the place had suddenly been transformed into a sci-fi dystopia, which, honestly, wasn't out of the question. As she turned away from her phone, Lien suddenly staggered. Her knees buckled, and for a split second, she felt like her entire body was about to collapse in on itself. She steadied herself on the doorframe, eyes wide, heart racing. "Okay. Nope. Not today," she muttered, feeling her pulse thundering in her ears, but just as quickly as the panic set in, something new happened. The feeling of weightlessness. Her head cleared. Her breath returned. And she realized, in that moment, that she could feel everything. The walls around her. The air. The atoms in the very floor beneath her feet. This wasn't just a strange mutation. This was something else entirely. Her skin tingled, and suddenly, she was no longer standing in her apartment. She was somewhere else. In a blink, she was transported. Not physically. She still stood in her living room, but the environment had changed. The room stretched and warped, the colors of the walls blending and fading in a haze of neon lights and swirling clouds. Everything felt distant, alien, as though the fabric of reality itself had unraveled. She looked down, and her hands, her claws, glowed brighter than ever before. What the hell? Lien breathed. A new voice echoed through the room, deep and resonant, like the hum of the universe itself. Welcome to the other side. Lien whipped around, heart pounding. No one was there. But she could feel it, something watching, something observing. Something waiting for her to understand. She took a shaky step back. And then another. Your evolution is just beginning, the voice continued. She was about to ask who, what, the voice was when everything snapped back into place. The glow dimmed. The room returned to normal. Lien staggered, nearly falling backward into her couch. What just happened? She whispered, her mind racing to catch up. It was like the ground beneath her feet had simply ceased to exist for a moment, like reality itself had split wide open. Then the phone buzzed again, this time with a new message from Sam. You okay? You're really late now. Lien stared at the text, her fingers trembling as she typed a reply. Yeah. Fine. But something's happening to me, Sam. She paused. Did she even know what she was saying? Something was definitely happening. But what? And why? The room felt colder suddenly. Or perhaps it was her. Was her skin colder? She rubbed her arms, noticing how the surface of her skin seemed to shimmer faintly. The strangeness was only increasing. She needed to figure this out. Fast, the phone buzzed again, but Lien didn't check it. She couldn't. Something was unfolding inside her, something that went beyond any logical explanation. She wasn't sure she was ready for what was happening, but she knew one thing for sure: her life, what she'd thought was an ordinary life, was never going to be the same again. Lien didn't go to work that day. She didn't even know if she was capable of going back to the office, or anywhere else for that matter. Her thoughts were scrambled, tangled in a mix of disbelief and fear, and her body was doing things it wasn't supposed to do. The mirror in the bathroom was still showing a woman she barely recognized. The glowing iridescence was fading, but it wasn't disappearing entirely. Her skin retained that strange, pearlescent sheen, and her once black hair had taken on an unsettling, translucent quality. She could see the fine details of the bones underneath, as though her body had become a window into something deeper, something other. As she turned away from the mirror, she flexed her fingers again. This time, the transformation wasn't as painful. It wasn't painful at all, actually. Her fingers stretched with an eerie smoothness, and her nails grew longer. The sensation felt almost pleasurable, like an itch finally scratched, or stretching after a long nap. She had no control over it. It just happened. The strange part wasn't just the way her body was changing, but the feeling that something inside her was shifting as well, like she wasn't just becoming something else, she was losing something. The line between who she was and who she was becoming blurred with every passing second. She needed answers. But where could she even begin? Her first instinct was to reach out to Mira, the woman who had inexplicably appeared in her life just hours ago. Mira had known things that didn't make sense, things that might explain what was happening to her. She had warned Lien about the changes, about the multiverse, and about what could happen if Lien didn't learn to control her newfound abilities. But Lien hadn't exactly asked for a mentor. Or this curse. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Mira. "You're awake. Good. I knew it wouldn't take long for you to start feeling the pull." Lien's heart skipped a beat as she read the message. She hadn't even told Mira about the transformation yet, but somehow, Mira knew. She was aware. "I don't know if 'awake' is the word for this," Lien typed back, her fingers trembling as she swiped the screen. "I think I'm losing my mind here. My hands are turning into claws, my skin's glowing, and I don't even know where to start." There was a pause. Then a new message appeared. "It's more than just your body changing, Lien. It's your essence." Lien read the words, letting them sink in. The essence of who she was? What did that even mean? What the hell was going on? Another message popped up. "You're crossing dimensions. Each shift alters your genetic structure. But don't worry. The changes are necessary. Without them, you wouldn't survive. You wouldn't be able to adapt to the new worlds. You wouldn't be able to survive the others." Lien stared at the words. Her heart pounded. She felt like she was standing on the edge of something vast and incomprehensible, but every instinct in her screamed at her to turn back. But the thought of returning to the world she knew, the life she had before this madness, seemed impossible. "The others?" Lien typed back. "Who are they? What's happening to me?" Myra's reply came quickly, as if she'd been waiting for the question. "They are the exosynthetics. Beings who've transcended their humanity, beings who have learned to harness the power of dimensional evolution. But they're dangerous, Lien. They want to control it. To use it to reshape reality itself. If you're not careful, you'll lose yourself, completely." Lien sank onto her couch, her mind racing. She wanted to laugh. It was all too insane, too far-fetched. Dimensional evolution? The exosynthetics? These were the kinds of things that belonged in bad sci-fi novels, not her life. But the evidence, her hands, her skin, her growing awareness that something was changing, deep inside, was too real to ignore. The phone buzzed again, breaking her thoughts. Mira had sent a link to a video, a grainy clip that looked like it had been filmed on an old camcorder. "Watch this. It will explain everything." Lien clicked the link without hesitation, her curiosity overcoming the skepticism that clung to her like a shadow. The video opened to show a man standing in front of a whiteboard, scribbling mathematical equations and strange symbols in a frenzy. His face was obscured, but his voice came through clearly. "What we've discovered is that the human body, as we know it, is not a fixed entity. It is a vessel. A vessel that can be altered by the fabric of the multiverse itself. When we travel between dimensions, our very genetics adjust, adapt, evolve, changing to better suit the environment we enter." Lien leaned forward, her breath catching. She recognized the language now. This wasn't a strange theory, it was real. But this process comes at a cost. The more we change, the less we become what we were. The more we lose ourselves. And if we let it go too far, there is no coming back. The man paused, looking directly into the camera. His eyes were wide with panic. "We have to stop it. We have to stop the exosynthetics before they take control." The video cut off abruptly, and Lien was left staring at the blank screen. A chill ran down her spine. Exosynthetics. The video had confirmed what Mira had said. The people, or whatever they were, who had mastered the power of dimensional evolution were out there, and they had plans. Lien looked down at her glowing skin again, her fingers now flexing with an almost unnatural grace. If what the video said was true, she had only scratched the surface. She wasn't just transforming, she was evolving into something new. And with each shift, the pull of the multiverse was becoming stronger, more insistent. She could feel it deep in her bones, the draw of other dimensions. The call to become more, but at what cost? Her phone buzzed once more, and Myra's message was waiting for her. "The time has come, Lien. You're ready to learn what you're truly capable of. But it won't be easy. The exosynthetics are already watching you. They've been tracking you ever since you crossed into the first new dimension. They'll try to pull you into their ranks, make you one of them. Lien sat up straighter, her heart racing. Her skin was still tingling, her body still reacting to something just out of reach. She could feel the energy building inside her, rising like a tide. It was seductive, like an itch that begged to be scratched. She took a deep breath. She had to make a choice. To stay human, to hold on to the life she knew, or to embrace the power that was slowly overwhelming her, to become something more than human. But was she even Lien anymore? "I'll find you," Lien typed back, her fingers steady now. "I need to know more. I need to understand what's happening to me. I need to know how to stop it, before it's too late." Her phone buzzed one last time, but she didn't need to read the message. She already knew what Mira would say. "I'll be waiting." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Lien stood up, the room spinning around her. It wasn't just her body that was changing. It was her soul, her very essence. She was caught between two worlds, two identities, the woman she used to be and the creature she was becoming. The pull of the multiverse was strong now. But Lien had made up her mind. She wasn't going to let the exosynthetics control her fate. She was going to find a way to control it herself, before it was too late, but she wasn't sure if that was even possible anymore. As she stepped toward the door, her claws, her hands, glowed brighter than ever before. Lien didn't wait. She didn't have time to think, to second-guess herself. Her mind was already moving faster than her body, urging her to act before she could lose control of either. Every instinct screamed at her to go. To leave. But where? And how? Her eyes scanned the room, feeling the weight of the decision that had just been made. She had no idea what awaited her on the other side of the door. Or if there was another side. She didn't even know if she'd be able to walk through a door and into the real world anymore. Her sense of reality had become slippery, like the thin membrane between a dream and waking. But she had to try. The moment her hand touched the doorknob, her body stiffened. A sharp, familiar sensation sliced through her. It was like a pulse. A current. And she realized, just before she could pull away, that the air around her was thickening. Her surroundings were shifting again. Lien's eyes widened as the walls seemed to bend and stretch. The doorknob became distant, blurry in her hand, like it was in a funhouse mirror. Not again. Her pulse quickened as the room folded in on itself. She felt herself yanked, pulled somewhere she didn't want to go. Not by choice. She had no control over it. The pull of another dimension was too powerful, too irresistible. The last thing she saw before everything dissolved around her was the fading glow of her own skin, glowing brighter by the second. For a moment, she lost herself in the shift. And then, without warning, she was somewhere else. Her feet slammed against hard, uneven ground. Gravel crunched under her boots, and the air felt thick, colder than she expected. She blinked rapidly, trying to adjust to the shift, to steady herself. She was no longer in her apartment. This was a place she had never seen before. Her heart pounded in her chest as she took in her surroundings, towering trees with bark like silver, stretching high into a sky that was a swirling mass of reds and blues. There was no horizon, only the vibrant, pulsating sky that seemed to hum with a life of its own. It was beautiful. And terrifying. Lien's breath hitched. She had seen nothing like this before. She reached out instinctively, her hand brushing against one of the silver trees. As soon as her fingers made contact, a jolt of energy shot up her arm. Her skin sparked with an electric thrill, her claws digging into the tree bark like they were one with it. "Okay. This is okay," she muttered to herself, trying to calm her nerves, but her hands, her glowing, alien hands, seemed to respond to the new environment on their own. The longer she stayed, the more the world around her seemed to change. The trees pulsated, the sky swirled. Every breath she took seemed to make her more attuned to the place, as though it was part of her now, just like her evolving body. She heard something, a noise. It was a low rumble, almost like an animal growling, but there was no creature in sight. The ground under her feet trembled, and her senses were on high alert. This was wrong. She wasn't meant to be here. Not like this. She wasn't ready for this place. A flicker of movement caught her eye, and she turned toward it, her heart racing. A shadow darted between the trees, too quick to be a person. Lien's instinct kicked in. She started running, her feet barely touching the ground, propelled by the strange, new energy that pulsed through her limbs. She wasn't sure if she was trying to outrun the unknown or if her body was simply moving faster than her mind could keep up. Her breath came in short, sharp bursts as she sprinted deeper into the forest of silver trees. The noise grew louder, the growls echoing off the metallic bark. Whatever it was getting closer. Then, she saw them, figures, human in shape, but not quite human. Their bodies were cloaked in shifting black armor, their faces hidden behind masks that glowed with an eerie blue light. Their movements were fluid, unnaturally fast. The exosynthetics. The ones Mira had warned her about. Lien skidded to a halt, her mind racing. They found me. She tried to steady her breathing, forcing herself to stay calm, even as her heart threatened to break free from her chest. These were the ones who had mastered the dimensional shifts. The ones who used the multiverse for their own gain. One of the figures stepped forward, its movements sleek and predatory. It tilted its head, scanning her with unnerving precision. Lien, the figure said. Its voice was deep, mechanical, filtered through some sort of speaker. We've been waiting for you. Her body tensed, her claws twitching at her sides. She felt an impulse to run, to get away from them, but there was no escape. She could sense their power, their control over this place. The exosynthetics had mastered the art of dimensional evolution, bending space, time, and reality to their will. They were more than human now, more than anything she could ever be. You're not ready, the exosynthetic continued, its voice smooth, almost comforting. But we can help you. We can show you how to evolve. How to unlock your true potential. Lien stood her ground, glaring at the figure. She wasn't sure what was happening to her, what she was becoming, but she wasn't about to let them control her. Not without a fight. I don't need your help, she spat, her voice filled with a venom she hadn't expected. She could feel the energy inside her surging, her body humming with power. She was changing. She could feel it in her bones, in her cells. She was becoming more, but the exosynthetics didn't flinch. They just stood there, watching her with those cold, glowing eyes. You don't understand, the figure said. This is your destiny. You are meant to join us. To embrace your true form. To be one with the multiverse. Lien's mind spun. Destiny? Was this really her fate? To become like them? To lose herself entirely? She felt the tug of their words, a strange pull in her chest, but she resisted. She had to resist. I'm not like you, she said, her voice low and steady. The exosynthetics didn't respond at first. Then, the leader took a slow step toward her, its movements deliberate, almost predatory. We don't expect you to understand yet. But you will. You'll see the truth. You're not human anymore, Lien. You never were. And once you accept that, you'll be free. With that, the exosynthetics began to advance, surrounding her, their glowing masks gleaming like eyes in the dark. Lien's chest tightened. The pull of the multiverse was stronger now, pulling her in every direction at once. She couldn't afford to be passive. She had to make a decision, and she had to make it now. She clenched her fists, her claws glowing brighter, crackling with power. She wasn't ready to lose herself, not yet. But the multiverse was vast, and the exosynthetics weren't going to let her go without a fight. And so, as the exosynthetics closed in, Lien made a choice. She wasn't going to become them, she wasn't going to let herself fade into something she didn't recognize. With a deep breath, she pushed off the ground, her body moving faster than it ever had before. The force of her leap sent a shockwave through the air, causing the exosynthetics to flinch back in surprise. Lien wasn't sure where she was going. All she knew was that she had to keep moving. Keep running. There had to be a way out. The ground shook beneath her as she sprinted through the alien forest. Behind her, the exosynthetics followed, their footsteps like thunder, but Lien had something they didn't. She had the will to fight.